Hello. I'd like to discuss 3 principles from the National Academy of Science book, How People Learn, that seem useful for thinking about instruction in any area. The first principle is actually illustrated by a great story by Leon Leone, who is an Italian story writer. And what I want to do is just play that for you right now.
It has been argued that a children's story written by Len Leone is a key for understanding human learning and how to enhance it. The story is called Fish is Fish. I'm going to summarize it and then ask if you agree or disagree with the argument that it's a key to understanding learning. And I will ask you to provide reasons for the answer you give. Here's the essence of Leone's story. A tadpole and a baby fish live in the same pond. They are intensely curious about the world outside their pond, but they are unable to explore since neither of them can get around or even survive outside of the water. They can only imagine what this new world might be like. Eventually, the tadpole grows into a frog and discovers to her delight that she can leave the pond and see for herself what only her imagination could see before. She promises Fish that she will return soon and tell him everything she saw. After a time, Frog did indeed return. "It's a wondrous place," Frog says, barely able to contain herself. "There are things called birds, and they have wings and beaks, and they can fly. And there are things called cows, and they have 4 feet and udders, and they chew grass. And some of them even have horns. And then there were these things called people, and they have 2 arms and 2 legs, and they walk upright, and they come in all different sizes." Meanwhile, Fish is thinking to himself, "At last I know what the rest of the world is like." And in his mind he pictures a fish bird, only with wings and a beak and soaring through the air. And then he pictures a fish cow, only with 4 feet and an udder and horns. And finally he pictures fish people, only in all sizes and with arms and legs and walking all around the land. There is more to Leone's story, but this is the part that's relevant to the challenge. What implications do you think it might have for understanding human learning? Or does it have any implications for learning? Please give reasons for the answers you suggest.
Okay, well, most people that listen to this story can see pretty clearly its relevance to education. That in fact, the way people interpret things is based on what they know already. And that's actually the first principle that came out of the How People Learn book, is that an effective teacher needs to draw out the pre-existing understandings that students bring with them to the situation. So with respect to the fish, you can see that his interpretations of cows and people and birds really depended on his pre-existing understanding of fish, and that dramatically affected the knowledge that he constructed. In a similar manner, if you start to really look at the preconceptions, pre-understandings that students bring to learning new content in engineering and mathematics and science or whatever, almost always they have certain sets of preconceptions that are based on their experiences with the world that actually need to be addressed directly and made visible. Otherwise, it's very easy for them to think they understood, just like the fish did. And it's also easy for the instructor to fail to realize that there's a mismatch in what he or she tried to help people understand. Well, the second point from the How People Learn book is that if you want to help people learn with understanding, that's a very important way to affect their ability to flexibly adapt to new situations. So let's just imagine, let's extend this Fish is Fish story a little further with apologies to Leon Leone, who didn't put this in his story. But if you look at this picture here, you see the fish suddenly inundated with media. And he's got televisions, and he's even got a computer. And in this case, he can see what a cow actually looks like and a bird actually looks like and so forth. So we might think that the Fish is Fish problem, this preconceptions problem that he had, is now totally solved and he knows what things look like. But in fact, if you look a little further, just knowing what a cow or other organisms look like isn't sufficient to really understand how they may be differ from a fish. And the way this is illustrated in the Leone story is, in fact, The fish is so excited about life outside the pond that it jumps out the pond and then suddenly discovers, one, that it can't breathe, and two, that it can't ambulate. And it's only because of the frog who knocks it back into the pond that the fish is able to live. And so if the fish is really going to understand the differences between fish and land animals, there's a huge body of knowledge that it would have to understand. Something about adaptation, something about oxygen levels, something about how different media let you do things, and so forth. So that's a second way that you can use fish as fish to illustrate this second point. Now, the third point that emerges for how people learn is the issue of metacognition, the idea that one of the most important things we need to help people learn is how to self-assess their own learning. And so imagine that the fish was a little better at this, that it had opportunities, or it had the habit of mind to say, wait a minute, these people that I imagine, they have like hats on and things, and boy, if I had a hat on, it would hurt my ability to move around in the water, so maybe there's something I don't understand. And these four legs that cows have, why would you need legs? So you can imagine also then that there's a little bit of something that you want to put on the part of the learner to help them understand, and that's the metacognitive part. So you can see that in the picture that's been up here on, maybe I should have thought of that or something like that. So basically these three things, these three principles then, are not a bad way to think about how to facilitate learning in any content area, and that's always assume that your learners are coming in with preconceptions. The only option they have is to build new interpretations on those interpretations that they have, and that the more you can make their thinking visible, the better off you're going to be in helping them stay in sync with what you intend, and vice versa. Second, if you're really going to develop the kind of understanding you need for flexible adaptation, you really need to focus on learning with understanding, not simply surface characteristics of things. And often we learn the surface characteristics of formulas or the surface characteristics of theories without really understanding the deeper principles. And when that happens, sometimes it's okay to apply them, but if something really changes, like suddenly we're from water to land, and you don't understand these things, the consequences are pretty dire. And then the third, again, is this emphasis on metacognition. And if you're going to be successful in life, you don't always have a mentor or a frog at whose feet you can sit. You really need to start to evaluate for yourself, ask yourself your own questions. So this is a very important part of helping people learn. So hopefully you can see how people learn, and fish is fish kind of complement one another in interesting ways. Thanks a lot.